Welcome to Have Your Say. I am Diana Robertson, President of the Mainline Branch NAACP. And I am happy to have as my guest today, Dr. Candace Robertson-James. How are you?
Good. I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me here today.
Great. So, Candace, why don't you, for those who may not know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Candace Robertson-James. My background is in the area of public health. I'm currently the director of the Master of Public Health program at LaSalle University, where I've been for a few years now. And I'm just really always excited and passionate about promoting health in our communities.
Great. So, one of the reasons we have you on today is so that you're able to promote your new book. But what I want to do before we start with the book is to talk a little bit about as you talked about your background in public health, and how has that influenced? I know in 2014 you actually did a TED Talk on education. So can you just briefly tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. That talk was titled "The Anatomy of Opportunity," and at that time, I really was just reflecting on the opportunities that we have. And at times, we think about we talk about health disparities. We think about where people are able to benefit in society. Are they able to reach their goals? Are they able to achieve the things that they want to achieve? And kind of what are some of those barriers that prevent them? And so at that time, I was reflecting on some of my early experiences as an educator, and where I taught middle school, and it really allowed me to just have a different appreciation for the opportunities and lack thereof that people have, and really to understand that all of us, our achievements are really based on the opportunities that we have. And unfortunately, if we were to, we think about those opportunities are structured disproportionately in our society. And so some groups, some families, some individuals have many more opportunities to succeed than others. And so that really I just wanted to communicate that message, that what if we were to structure our society in a way that everyone had the same opportunities to achieve their best lives and their best selves, and to achieve their goals and their dreams, and the opportunities to be educated, opportunities to be well fed, opportunities to be loved and cared for, opportunities to receive messages of strength and power. How would our society look if we all had those opportunities?
Okay. And as I recall, in your position as an educator at that time, you were able to actually use that position and your background in the sciences and all to help input a program within that school structure that had not actually previously existed, correct?
Yes, and so at that time I was new graduate of Villanova University with my bachelor's in science and biology, and I was always excited about sciences. And when I went to teach, I realized that the school just didn't have the resources to do some of the things that we might experience in other places. And again, that was my thing about opportunities, exposing the children to the world of science and all that we could do. And so with my connections at Villanova, I was able to actually arrange a field trip there and take the students to Villanova, and we toured the lab. They did dissections of the brain, and they were excited about and just to get them on a college campus, but more so to expose them to a different aspect of applied science that they may not have had exposure to. Villanova donated a bunch of microscopes, and so we were able to then have microscopes in the classroom. We started a science fair, and so we allowed the students to just explore some of those research questions that they had, and to be able to display that in a way and present it to their peers and other faculty and teachers and their parents and others from the community. And so that was at that time the first time that they were able to have that. And so I was really excited to just again again, be able to bring some of those opportunities and to realize that, again, all of us have within our powers to kind of open up some doors and, provide opportunities that we've had and pass those along to others.
And what was the feedback from the parents? Like, kids are actually staying after school excited about doing science. Like, what was that feedback?
It was really wonderful and humbling. I was young and excited and ambitious, and it was exciting to hear the feedback from their parents that the students wanted to stay. I was there, and that they had somewhere to, a safe place to stay and to learn and to grow. And of course, as a teacher, I got to know my students, so much more in depth than I would have just, during the course of the normal school day. I got to know their families well as also. And so it was just a really wonderful experience of sharing, where they let me into their lives and I was able to let them into mine. And it was a beautiful exchange in that setting.
Okay. So then fast forward a little bit, you go on pursuits of education.
Yes.
And then decided with the field of public health. And as you pursued getting your doctorates, what was your experience in doing your dissertation?
So my dissertation research really explored the health of women of color, and largely African American women. And my research really explored the role of experiences of inequality and discrimination, racism and sexism, and how that influenced their health status. And so I had a series of focus groups with many women, and also conducted surveys, and just had the privilege of talking with so many women, and they shared their experiences over the course of their lifetime. They shared the experiences of discrimination that they had from, as a child and as adults. They shared experiences of discrimination in the workplace, in healthcare settings, in their daily lives, sometimes even within their own families and communities. And so time after time, I just heard stories of kind of the women sharing what they wish they knew as a child, or messages they wish they would have received as a child. And so that really just hit me as far as, wow, what if, we were able to give children, again, going back to, my roots and where I started, with working with children, what if we were able to just be more proactive with giving them positive messages that, regardless of, how similar or different you fit in or look like, whatever the norm of society is, that you are valued, you are loved, you're special, you're appreciated, you are worthy. And it was just really struck me that as adults, people were still wounded and still living and making decisions and struggling in some situations based off of the inability to receive those messages, or to the opposite messages that they received. And now women are in a place of strength, and they have succeeded and they have overcome in spite of all that they have experienced. And I was really humbled by their ability to share those experiences with me, and I just wanted to do something beyond my own personal pursuits of my dissertation and the research, but I wanted to do something to honor them and honor their lives, honor their stories, honor what they shared with me, and to just do something that made that would honor their stories that they shared. And so that kind of inspired the book Reflections of Me.
Okay, so now to the book. You have authored your first children's book.
Yes.
And so you talked a little bit about the background. So tell us a little bit about the message of the book.
Absolutely. And so Reflections of Me really, like I said, was an attempt to honor, the women who participated in my dissertation research. I just didn't want to kind of, have an experience where, okay, great, thank you for sharing. Here's my research, here's my doctoral degree, and, let me just kind of move on. Because their stories impacted me in such a huge way, I wanted to do something to to give back, and I wanted to do something. And that was just one of the messages that I continue to hear over and over again, like messages, I wish I would have heard this as a child, or I wish I would have heard that as a child. And so Reflections of Me just really tries to explore that and to show women of all shades, of all flavors, that you are worthy, regardless of how you fit into society, regardless of what you think those norms are and how you may differ from them, that you're beautiful, that you are your own superhero, that you have talents and powers and gifts that the world can benefit from. And I just wanted to encourage them to use, to recognize the gifts and talents and skills that they have, and recognize them as superpowers, and be able to go out into the world and share them with others as such. And so this is what the book is really about. It's just about having really young women, but really anyone. I've had people say the message is really universal, especially in our current climate. The message is more universal than ever, that no matter who you are beautiful, you're loved, you're special, you're important, and the world needs you, and you have special gifts and talents, and that we want to foster them. And no matter, we don't need everyone to look the same, we don't need everyone to have the same talents. That's the beauty of the superheroes, when you have them all together, one can do one thing and one can do something else. And if we were to recognize all of our gifts and skills as superpowers, and one person has something really unique and different than another person, but when we all come together, we can help each other, we can bring healing and strength to one another. And I just wanted people to recognize their own gifts and talents as superpowers, and recognize their own self-worth and value. And really also the book aims to facilitate conversations between adults and the youth in their life. And so whether it's mothers and their daughters, or aunts and nieces, or whoever, the youth in your life, to be able to sit down. And so at the end of the book, there's a discussion guide. And so, this ways that perhaps adults can ask their youth, these questions. How are you feeling about yourself? What's your superpower? If you were going to think about your skills and talents, let's have that conversation. Is there other things that, you're concerned about, or maybe messages that you have already heard and begin to internalize that you're not as happy about with yourself? And just really to give also adults some tools and ideas about how to have these conversations with the youth in their lives, so that they can speak positive messages into their lives as well.
Okay, and I think you said something very important when you talk about the superheroes within those things, because a lot of times when people, I've heard people ask the question, so who do you consider your hero, this and that and the other, and it's always someone else, and so I think to realize that everybody has strengths, and unique gifts, that actually, if utilized properly, then you, within your own right, are a superhero.
Absolutely. So, and we have to, and I think sometimes we have a spirit of grandeur where we have to, we look at someone else and we say, oh wow, they're able to do this magnificent, wonderful thing. They're able to play in front of millions, or they have these, very tangible things, but also not recognizing, someone's ability to be super humble and kind, and have empathy, and to realize that they have the power to make people smile when they're feeling down, and people, no matter who they're around, they cause their room to be lighter and happier, and that's a superpower. That's an amazing gift, to be able to bring joy and happiness. And what if we were able to recognize that gift in that person, to be able to say, wow, I can change the room, I can make people feel joy and happy and lighter, and or whatever those gifts and powers are, that they don't have to be, sometimes they are super overt and super, that they can be actualized in a way where they can be applauded, but sometimes it's not. And but that's still, a wonderful superpower. And just like when we see the super, heroes, or some gifts and some powers that are super, overt, and then others that we're like, what does that person have, or what can they do? And then when they're in that right circumstance and situation that has that need, we're like, oh wow, that's amazing. They were able to meet that need. And the other superpower superheroes, maybe they couldn't meet that need.
Right.
And so for all of us to realize that we have that unique gifts, that all of us have something that we can give, you know, to the world, to our families, to our communities, and you know, that we don't have to necessarily, you know, wish and want for someone else's power, but really to spend time, you know, reflections is like reflecting on what are our own gifts, what are our own strengths and talents, and how can we foster them, and then how can the adults, you know, in our lives help us to do that also. So, you know, how can, you know, parents and others, you know, help youth to reflect on what their strengths are, and how can they be fostered as well.
So what do your children think about your book?
They are very excited. It was a very long journey, and so they are excited to see it in print and to see it in, I guess, in the flesh, if you will.
Right.
And they're, I think, excited about the messages as well. It was, you know, it's interesting, you know, different pages, and I do want to give definitely credits to the illustrators, Greg Robinson and Ian Newton, because they really worked to embody the message of of course, it's a children's book, and so many, it's, you know, mainly also drawn in, or children are drawn in by the illustrations, and so Greg and Ian, they really worked to embody the message of the book through the illustrations, and spent an enormous amount of time really paying attention to that detail, from the colors to the images. You know, what messages are a youth going to receive from this, and it's really exciting to see the different pages, and you know, people instantly, from, you know, before they even read the text on the page, they get it, you know, and it's just an amazing feeling. But one of the pages, you know, that's one of their favorite is the page where, you know, she's really kind of exploring different parts of herself, and you know, there's different images that represent her skills and talents and things that she's curious about and trying, and so I think, again, it just gives them permission to, like, you know, be curious and to try new things, and, you know, to explore the world and explore yourself, and figure out, you know, what you do love, and what you're passionate about, and what you're good at, and, you know, that doesn't have to look like, you know, what your peers or even what your siblings may look like for them. And so you know, I'm excited to be able to share this with them, you know, first and foremost as well.
Okay, so in looking at this, then from what you've stated, this sounds like part one. So maybe some other books to come in the future. And you talked about the importance of parents, or, you know, other adults interacting, giving them a tool which they can also interact with the young person that you know, is reading the book, or they're reading the book too, in a way to help them to think about this and have this conversation. And so how do you see that, you know, vision developing in the future? From what are some things you have in mind that, you know, as time moves forward with this is initiating this process, what are some of your ideas as to how this may grow?
Well, I definitely want to be able to have, you know, programming around the book, and to be able to develop programs that can, you know, in safe environments, facilitate those conversations as well. And so programs where youth and, you know, their supportive adults can kind of come hang out together, and they can read parts of the book together. They can have some of these conversations, and also, you know, engage in activities that help to also pull out some of the messages of the book. Because, you know, I know, even having my own children, today's world, we're busy. You know, we're doing this, going to this practice and this thing, and, you know, we're just always so busy. And so sometimes, you know, you spend time, but, you know, necessarily that might not be like concerted time to have these conversations, or concerted activities that, you know, take those conversations to the next level. And so I think just, you know, having time and space for adults and children to come together to be able to talk and have these conversations. You know, how are they feeling when someone at school said something to them, or how are they feeling when their friends maybe, you know, got selected for something and they didn't, or, you know, whatever the situation is, how are they feeling, how are they dealing with it, and more so, what messages are they internalizing and kind of storing away from that might not even emerge until 10 or 20 years later, and then they realize that they've been carrying the seed with them, you know, for so long that started started, and we all know many of us can march things back, and so it started in childhood, and we never had that conversation with the person to say, you know what, it's okay, don't hold it, let that go. That does not reflect who you are. And so, just the opportunity to allow, parents or children, adults, and the girls in their lives or anyone to be able to have the important conversations with people and to be able to engage in activities that can foster that strong sense of positive self-concept.
Great. And I know that you've done talks and you've been to participated in forums, which I know not too long ago there was a forum where the young people themselves actually helped to facilitate, and their topic of discussion was suicide. And so as we talk about, and then I think there were some youth there who maybe their parents was for the first time hearing about some of these thoughts. And so I can see, a book like this helping for folks to have that conversation. And so what is your feeling about that?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I am, just humbled to be able to, have a product and have something that hopefully people can find beneficial. More than anything, I think the goal is for them to find their own self-worth and beauty and understand that every single person on this earth and this planet has so much value to add, and that ultimately, I think I used to hear this kind of growing up, and even working with youth, I think many people are struggling, and struggle doesn't have an age limit on it. And I know so many times we say, oh, you're 10, what do you have to be stressed about, or what do you have to be burdened about, and that's just simply not true. Just because you're 10 or 6 or 9 or whatever age, it doesn't mean that you aren't legitimately stressed and concerned and burdened, and have real burdens and things that you need to offload. And so I would be excited to have Reflections of Me be a part of that, and hopefully facilitate those conversations. So instead of just kind of brushing them off, have that conversation so parents can really realize they don't have to be in a forum to realize, like, wow, I never knew you were having that struggle. I never knew that was so impactful to you, that they can initiate the conversations with their teens or with their youth.
So is there a targeted age group for the book?
So in general, the targeted age is 6 to 12. It's a picture kind of children's book, but certainly I think children age younger than 6, it would be relevant to. Certainly my own children have been exposed to it prior to the age of 6, and I think the messages are timeless, and some of the conversations and activities definitely can extend past 12 as well. Okay.
So for those who want to purchase your book, where can they get your book? Where can they access your book?
Yeah, so certainly for more information about the book, you can definitely go to Amazon. The book is available on both Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. If you kind of just search Reflections of Me, and you can probably put in my name, Candace, or Candace Robertson-James, just because there's other titles that are similar, but Reflections of Me and Candace will easily get you to the book on both Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Also, if you'd like to send an email about anything or about the activities, some of them are in the book and you've done them with your child and we want to share, you can email me at reflectionsofmebook@gmail.com. And also, if you'd like to post anything, a picture on Instagram about some of the activities, I won't give it away, but it inspires you to do something with your child, and you could maybe post it. And on Instagram, my handle also is Reflections of Me Book.
Okay, great. So, so as we wind up with this is I think going to be wonderful, and certainly in a time period where we're constantly talking about bullying, we're constantly talking about different abuses and just some of the negative experiences that our younger generation has gone through, or as you say, adults those who are now adults who experienced negative messages as a child, still struggling, and with a timeless message, that to be able to have something that is simplistic enough that they can relate to, but and yet something that they can actually look at every day and reference. So so what would your final message be to those in wanting to go out and get this book immediately?
Well, I think it's also for anybody. You might be saying, I don't have a child, but you might have a child in your life that you might be the one to read it. Maybe the other people in their life are not going to be the ones to read it to them, and so sometimes we take for granted that you're going to get a positive message from somebody else, and so we all have people and children and young people in our lives, and so whether you have biological children, whether you are just friends and have nieces and nephews, or have people in your community that you intersect with, and you might be the person to read it and have those that important conversation with that youth, that young person, that could really be beneficial to them. So I think to really examine our lives and to think about who this could apply to.
Great. So we thank you for for being here today.
You're welcome.
And discussing your book. And I do believe as well that there are going to be many who benefit from this, and this is going to be just the first of many more, I'm sure. But as we go on in our day-to-day lives and we interact, and we have the opportunity to interact with young people or just even other adults who are struggling with different issues of self-esteem and negative messages that they've lived with all of their lives. We want you to be able to reference this book as a new tool for them to use. Reflections of Me by Dr. Candace Robertson-James. And once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for having this vision to write the book. And as folks get the book, read it. Read it to your children. Think about the message that is portrayed and how you can also have your say. Thank you.